I'm using a throwaway as this is causing major issues in our family right now and I don't want anyone involved finding my main account. Names changed for privacy. This is a long post but I need to give proper background so everyone understands how we got here. I, 36F, met Penelope in high school when we were both 17. She was already out and proud while I was still deep in the closet, mostly because my family was somewhat traditional. Penelope and I became close friends first, but there was always something more between us. I spent those early years struggling with my identity while watching her live her truth openly. She never pushed me to come out, just supported me through everything. When I finally came out at 21, my family had mixed reactions. Mom was uncomfortable at first but came around eventually. Dad surprised everyone by being immediately supportive. He said he'd suspected for years and was just waiting for me to be ready to tell him. Sarah was only 12 then and didn't really understand, but she grew up knowing Penelope as part of our family. Penelope and I got married in 2019 after being together for 15 years. We wanted kids but weren't sure how to go about it until life made that decision for us in the most tragic way. Penelope's best friend Tess became pregnant in 2020. She was single and scared but determined to keep the baby. Penelope supported her through everything, went to every appointment, helped set up the nursery, was even in the delivery room when Jack was born. Tess was an amazing mom to Jack for his first year. What none of us knew was that she had an undiagnosed heart condition. In 2021, she went to sleep one night and never woke up. Penelope was the one who found them, Jack alone in his crib, crying and hungry, and Tess in her bed. I'll never forget her phone call to me that day. She was hysterical, trying to care for Jack while waiting for the paramedics. The image still haunts her. We adopted Jack as Tess had no family able to take him. Her parents had passed away years ago, and her only sister was dealing with addiction issues. We raise him as our own but keep Tess's memory alive. He has photos of her in his room and knows she's his first mommy who lives in heaven now. Now about Sarah and Steve. My sister met him at university 8 years ago. She was 19 and he was 20. From the first time we met him, something felt off. He has this way of making subtle digs at people while maintaining plausible deniability. He'll say something cruel and then claim he's just being honest or that people are too sensitive. For example, at their first family dinner with us, he commented on how Penelope and I wouldn't know what real parenting was like since we couldn't have our own kids. This was before Jack, and we were struggling with fertility decisions at the time. When Penelope got upset, he said he was just stating facts and that we were being oversensitive. My dad can't stand him. There have been countless incidents where Steve has made inappropriate comments about Dad's age or questioned his decisions about retirement. Penelope usually ignores him, but occasionally she'll respond with clever comebacks that make Dad laugh. Like when Steve complained about Dad's new car being too expensive for a retiree, Penelope asked if Steve was worried about his inheritance already. Mom tries to keep the peace by changing the subject whenever Steve starts up. My grandparents hate him too, but they're old school and believe in being polite to guests. Even they have their limits though, especially my granddad who's normally the quietest person I know. Last weekend was rough as it was the anniversary of Tess's death. Penelope, Jack, and I visited her grave on Saturday. Penelope always struggles this time of year, but she tries to stay strong for Jack. She sat by the grave telling Jack stories about his first mom while I watched them from a distance, giving them space. On Sunday, we had our regular family gathering at my parents' house. These happen every few months as a way to keep everyone connected. Usually, they're pleasant enough as long as Steve behaves himself. Penelope was still quiet from the previous day, and my dad noticed. They've always had a special bond, he treats her like another daughter. They went for a walk together, something they often do when either of them needs to talk. Steve apparently took issue with this. He demanded to know why he wasn't invited on their walk, acting like a child excluded from a game. I explained about Tess's anniversary and how Penelope was having a hard time. His response was that she should be over it by now since it had been 3 years. My granddad, who rarely speaks up, said that his best friend had died 20 years ago and he still had days where the loss felt fresh. Steve shut up then, but you could tell he was seething. When Penelope and Dad returned, she seemed better. We all sat down for our late lunch, and things were going fine until Steve tried to insert himself into Penelope's conversation with my granddad about Christmas markets. When they didn't immediately include him in their plans, he exploded. He shouted across the table about how Penelope was manipulating everyone with her grief, that she was getting all the attention because her friend died 3 years ago, and that we all needed to get over it. He even threw in a few swear words, which my grandparents hate. The whole table went silent. I expected Penelope to lose it. She's usually calm but protective of Tess's memory. Instead, she looked at him with this eerily calm expression and said they hadn't even been talking about Tess, just making plans for the Christmas markets. Then she absolutely destroyed him. She told him that everyone in the family hates him because he's toxic and narcissistic. That family gatherings are actually enjoyable when he can't make it. She pointed out that he has no friends outside of Sarah, and even his own family can't stand to be around him. The final blow was when she said that Tess had made more impact in her 32 years than Steve could in 150, and that Tess's funeral was packed with people who loved her while he'd be lucky if Sarah showed up at his. After that bombshell, Penelope went to the garden and I followed. My dad made Sarah and Steve leave, which was the right call. When we came back inside, Penelope apologized to everyone for losing her composure, but nobody except Mom thought she needed to apologize. Dad even made a joke about a lesbian being the one to tell him straight, which broke the tension and got everyone laughing. Yesterday, Sarah called demanding an apology from Penelope, threatening that she and Steve wouldn't come to Christmas otherwise. I reminded her we wouldn't be there anyway as we're spending it with Penelope's mom this year. She got really upset, insisting Penelope was out of line and needed to apologize. I refused, telling her I agreed with everything Penelope said. Today, Dad called asking if Penelope's mom would mind extra guests for Christmas. Apparently, Sarah had called Mom ranting, and Mom told Dad to make Penelope apologize. They had a huge fight about it, and now Dad's refusing to spend Christmas with Steve, even if it means damaging his relationship with Sarah. My granddad's joining us too. Mom's furious, saying Dad and Penelope are destroying the family. Penelope offered to apologize just to keep peace in the family, but I told her absolutely not. Everything she said was true, and I'm tired of everyone walking on eggshells around Steve just because Sarah loves him. I need advice from anyone who's dealt with toxic family members. How do we move forward from here? I can't see any way to make this work without someone getting hurt. Update 1: I never expected things to escalate this badly, but here we are. The situation has gotten much worse, and I need to share what happened last night. Since my last post, the family has been in complete chaos. Sarah has been sending endless texts to everyone, switching between guilt-tripping and angry accusations. She sent messages to our entire extended family about how Penelope disrespected Steve and how I'm choosing my wife over my own sister. Mom has been calling daily, leaving voicemails about how we're tearing the family apart during the holidays. Dad and Granddad have been amazing through all this. They've been shutting down anyone who tries to pressure us into apologizing to Steve. Dad even went off on Mom when she suggested that maybe Penelope was still unstable from Tess's death, and that's why she lashed out at Steve. He told her she was being cruel and that she needed to stop enabling Steve's behavior. Last night everything came to a head. Penelope and I were home with Jack, having a quiet evening. Penelope was on the floor playing blocks with him while I was in the kitchen making dinner. Around 7 p.m., there was aggressive knocking at our door. Before I could even reach it, I heard Sarah's voice demanding we open up. I looked through the peephole and saw both Sarah and Steve standing there. I opened the door but kept the security chain on. Sarah immediately started crying, saying we needed to talk this out as a family. I told them this wasn't the time or place, and they needed to leave. Steve then did something I never expected. He literally shoulder-checked the door, breaking the security chain. The noise scared Jack, who started crying. Penelope immediately took him upstairs to his room while I pulled out my phone to call the police. Steve barged into our living room, shouting about how Penelope had ruined everything. He was red-faced and looked like he'd been drinking. Sarah followed him in, still crying and saying we just needed to talk. I was simultaneously trying to call the police and my dad, who lives just 10 minutes away. Steve started ranting about how Penelope had humiliated him in front of everyone, how she'd turned the family against him, and how we were discriminating against him because he was straight. He threatened to sue us for defamation and said he'd make sure everyone knew what kind of person Penelope really was. The whole time, Sarah just stood there wringing her hands and occasionally saying, "Steve, please calm down," in this weak voice that made me want to shake her. This was my little sister, who used to come to me for everything, and now she was just standing there while her boyfriend terrorized my family. What really got me was when Steve started shouting up the stairs, telling Penelope to come down and face him like a real man. The blatant homophobia in his words just confirmed everything Penelope had said about him at the family gathering. I could hear Jack crying upstairs and Penelope trying to comfort him, which made me even angrier. Dad arrived before the police. The moment he walked in and saw Steve screaming up our stairs, something in him snapped. Dad might be 62, but he still goes to the gym 3 times a week. He grabbed Steve by the collar and literally dragged him out of our house. Sarah followed them, screaming at Dad to let go of Steve. The police arrived just as Steve was threatening to press charges against Dad for assault. They took statements from everyone, and when they heard how Steve had broken in and was screaming at my wife and child, they asked if we wanted to press charges. We didn't hesitate to say yes. We're filing for a restraining order first thing tomorrow. The police officer suggested we gather any previous threatening messages or emails from Steve to support our case. They also documented the damage to our door. After everyone left, Mom showed up. Instead of asking if we were Penelope or how Jack was doing, she immediately started berating us for involving the police. She said we were overreacting and that Steve was just emotional and trying to make things right. When I asked how she knew where we lived, we'd moved recently and deliberately hadn't shared our new address with Sarah, she admitted she'd given it to them. I was furious. We kept our address private specifically because of Steve, and Mom had just handed it over without our permission. When Dad found out, he lost it. He told Mom she'd betrayed our trust and put her grandchild in danger. Mom tried to defend herself, saying she was just trying to help them patch things up, but Dad wasn't having it. Now the family is completely split. Dad, Granddad, and Penelope's family are firmly on our side. Mom, Sarah, and a few of our aunts are saying we're being dramatic and should just apologize to keep the peace. They keep insisting that Steve has changed and deserves another chance, completely ignoring the fact that he just broke into our home and terrified our child. We've installed security cameras and changed all our locks. Jack is now afraid to be downstairs alone and gets scared whenever someone knocks on the door. He keeps asking if the angry man is coming back. It breaks my heart to see him like this. Penelope is blaming herself, saying if she hadn't confronted Steve at the family gathering, none of this would have happened. I keep telling her she did nothing wrong, Steve is the one who couldn't handle being called out on his behavior. Dad says the same thing, but I can see this is weighing heavily on her. I've blocked Sarah and Mom's numbers for now, and we're speaking to them only through our lawyer about the restraining order. The whole situation is a mess, and I can't believe it's gotten to this point. How did we go from a family disagreement to having to file police reports and restraining orders? I'm dreading the holidays now, even though we're spending them with Penelope's family. The whole situation just feels surreal. Update 2: I need to share some shocking developments in our family situation. What started as drama over Steve's behavior has uncovered something much darker, and now I understand why Mom was so desperate to keep Steve happy. 2 weeks ago, Dad was going through their joint accounts to prepare for tax season when he noticed large unexplained withdrawals over the past 2 years. When he confronted Mom about it, she broke down and revealed everything. She's been gambling for the past 3 years, mostly online poker and sports betting. She's deep in debt, we're talking about nearly $50,000. The worst part? Steve found out about her gambling about 2 years ago. Instead of telling anyone, he started lending her money to cover her losses. He'd give her a few thousand here and there, always making sure to document everything with promissory notes. Mom kept accepting his help, thinking she'd win it back eventually. Now he basically owns her, threatening to demand immediate repayment if she doesn't help him fix things with the family. This explains why Mom was so insistent on us apologizing to Steve, why she gave him our new address, and why she's been defending his behavior. She's terrified he'll expose her gambling or demand all the money back at once. Dad is devastated. They've been married for 40 years, and she's been lying to him for years. Sarah found out about this at the same time we did. She came to our house yesterday, alone this time, crying and apologizing. Apparently, she knew Steve was lending Mom money but thought it was for home repairs. She had no idea about the gambling or how Steve was using it as leverage. Finding out that her boyfriend was essentially blackmailing her mother has finally opened her eyes to who he really is. The restraining order was granted last month, but Steve keeps finding ways around it. He creates new email addresses to contact us, uses different phone numbers to call, and even tried to reach Penelope through her work LinkedIn profile. He's gone from demanding an apology to making threats about exposing family secrets. Last week, he started spreading rumors at Penelope's workplace. He contacted several of her colleagues through social media, suggesting that she's mentally unstable because of Tessa's death, and that's why she attacked him at the family gathering. He even implied that we shouldn't have custody of Jack because of Penelope's issues. Thankfully, Penelope's boss is supportive and has documented everything for our lawyer. Dad has moved in with us temporarily. He can't stand being in the house with Mom knowing she's been lying to him for years. He's talking about divorce, something I never thought I'd hear from my parents. The gambling and lies are bad enough, but giving Steve ammunition to use against the family was the final straw for him. Granddad has been our rock through all of this. He comes over almost every day to spend time with Jack, taking him to the park or reading stories. Jack adores him, and it's helping him feel secure again after Steve's break-in. The other day, Granddad got emotional and told me that in all his years, he's never seen someone cause as much damage to a family as Steve has. Mom tried to come by last week to explain herself, but we wouldn't let her in. She's still more worried about Steve exposing her gambling than about what she's done to the family. She left a long letter in our mailbox, mostly justifying her actions and begging us not to let Dad divorce her. She barely mentioned Jack or how her actions put him in danger when she gave Steve our address. Sarah is staying with friends right now, saying she needs time to think about her relationship with Steve. She's finally seeing all the red flags we tried to point out over the years. The way he isolated her from her friends, how he always needed to be the center of attention, how he used information as leverage against people. I feel like I'm watching my family implode, but at the same time, I'm relieved that the truth is finally coming out. All those years of Steve's toxic behavior, and it turns out he was even worse than we thought. He wasn't just a rude, attention-seeking bully, he was actively manipulating and blackmailing our mother. Penelope is handling everything with incredible grace, but I know this is hard on her. The stuff Steve's saying about her mental health and Tess is particularly cruel. She's started documenting everything in case we need to take legal action beyond the restraining order. Dad's meeting with a divorce lawyer next week. He says he can forgive the gambling, but he can't forgive Mom choosing to protect Steve over her own grandchild's safety. I never thought our family would end up like this, but I guess you never really know what people are capable of until they show you. Update 3. This will be my final update on the situation. A lot has happened in the past 3 months, and I think it's time to share how everything turned out. Dad went through with the divorce after discovering Mom had taken out several loans in his name to cover her gambling debts. She'd forged his signature on loan documents, which made his decision final. The divorce proceedings revealed she owes over $80,000 to various lenders, including $15,000 to Steve. Dad had to refinance their house to pay off the loans in his name, but he's done supporting her financially. Sarah finally left Steve last month. The breaking point came when she found emails between him and Mom where he'd explicitly threatened to ruin our family if Mom didn't help him get back into everyone's good graces. He'd been documenting everything for years, keeping evidence of Mom's gambling and loans as insurance. Sarah said reading those emails made her physically sick. She couldn't believe she'd wasted 8 years with someone so manipulative. Steve didn't take the breakup well. He tried to use the evidence against Mom anyway, but by then everyone already knew about the gambling. When that didn't work, he started showing up at Sarah's workplace. She had to get her own restraining order after he slashed her tires. Mom moved in with Aunt Linda and claims she's getting help for her gambling addiction. She sends emails every few weeks, usually when she's feeling guilty. They're always the same, apologizing for the loans but defending giving Steve our address because she just wanted the family to heal. She still doesn't seem to understand the gravity of putting Jack in danger. Dad found a small apartment near us and sees Jack almost every day. The divorce was hard on him, but he's doing better now. He joined a gym with Granddad and started taking cooking classes. Penelope's mom has practically adopted him. She invites him over for dinner twice a week and they've become great friends. It's nice seeing him smile again. Penelope decided to look for a new job after Steve's smear campaign at her workplace. Even though her boss was supportive, the rumors affected some client relationships. She found a better position at a larger company with better pay, so Steve actually did her a favor in the end. The new company even offers better adoption benefits, which we're considering using in the future. Jack is doing much better after 6 months of play therapy. He's not afraid of visitors anymore, though he still prefers when people call before coming over. He asks about Mom sometimes, but he's happy spending time with Penelope's mom and dad. Granddad is still his favorite person. They have a standing date every Saturday morning for pancakes and cartoons. We've maintained no contact with Mom and blocked anyone who tried to defend Steve's actions or pressure us into reconciling. Some family members think we're being too harsh, but they weren't there when Steve broke down our door and terrified our son. They didn't see how Mom chose protecting Steve over Jack's safety. Sarah is in therapy now and has apologized to Penelope multiple times. We're cautiously rebuilding our relationship with her, but it's going to take time. She's focusing on herself right now, got a promotion at work and started taking classes to finish her degree. Sometimes I feel sad about how everything turned out, especially for my parents. 40 years of marriage ended because Mom couldn't admit she needed help. But I know we made the right choice standing our ground. Our family is smaller now, but it's stronger and healthier without the toxic influences. Steve still tries to contact us occasionally through new numbers or emails, but we document everything and forward it to our lawyer without responding. The latest we heard, he moved back in with his parents in another state. Good riddance. Penelope and I are focusing on our future now. We're considering adopting another child once Jack is a bit older. After everything that's happened, we've learned that family isn't about blood or obligation, it's about choosing to love and protect each other, no matter what.